Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you are new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week I am joined by Steve Beedie. Steve helps the energy sector reduce stress, which is really important actually just now. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Michelle. It's really nice to be here. So I am... I'm an Armed Forces veteran. I have worked offshore in oil and gas for 18 years, and I was 16 years on drill crew, mainly in the North Sea, but I was in Africa for a year as well. And for the last 5 or 6 years, I have been doing talks and podcasts, and I wrote a best-selling book, did a TED Talk, and basically I have been navigating the global energy sector, delivering talks and helping people reduce their stress and just find a way to practically manage their day-to-day pressures so that they can, be better on the rig, on the vessel, in the office, and just have a better quality of life.
It is really important. I was going to ask you whether it was important, but it is a really important subject. That's why I invited you onto the podcast. But how did you get involved in this, in stress management?
So it came because I was observing everything. So since 2006-07, I have been doing speaking. It was mainly for veterans because veterans were struggling, as I had struggled with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and suicide. But then the other factors, divorce, loss of job, loss of home, loss of identity, these things were like really penetrating people. So I just started to share my unspoken problems, my unspoken wounds, so to speak, to give people permission, just a bit of like, oh, so we can speak about this stuff. Because men are not the best communicators in the world of our emotions, and I wanted to change that. So I recognised that the industry, as it goes through its ups and downs, the stress levels were becoming harder and harder to manage. The world sped up, divorces were going higher and higher, layoffs, payoffs, redundancies. These issues bring an immense amount of pressure to people's lives, men and women, teams. And then sadly, I had a dear friend of mine that I was on a crew with for, I think, 4 years, but I'd known him for a while and I knew his family. And sadly, he took his life on the rig, and that deeply impacted me in a way that I never expected to. And then that was okay, I need to do something for my industry, not just go to work. So I began considering, how do I communicate these issues in a way that roughnecks can understand? A driller, and a tool pusher, an OAM, a cement. How do I communicate this in a way that makes sense? Because I was full of veteran talk. And I was on the drill floor on the 40s. And for the 1000th time in my career, we were doing a section of well, and we were making a connection. And every time we set the slips, the driller turns the pumps off, and then we have to release the pressure via the bleed off. And just like normal, so, Stevie, can you go and open the bleed off, mate? And I walk over, and just as I crank that first turn, and you hear that that release of pressure, and I was like, that's it. I will teach them how to open the bleed off. And so I began writing a book and delivering talks, and it just kind of grew from there. And people connected with it. They were like, I know what you mean. Open the bleed off. That just makes so much sense.
So what made you decide to go into the energy sector after finishing up in the armed forces?
So honestly, it's the only place it would take me. I was a snowplow driver. That was my first job when I got back. Very lonely job. A very, very lonely job. It was good pay at the time. It's a great job, but it just wasn't for me. I worked on the roads. I was a coal man for 2 weeks. I was a delivery driver, and then I got into carpet fitting, flooring, which I kind of liked. But still, there was something missing, some I just didn't feel tethered to it correctly. And I come from a family. All the men in my family are either in drilling or well services since the 80s. And my dad at the time, he's like, get yourself offshore, son. My dad's ex-forces as well. And he said, get yourself offshore. He said, that's where the money is. He said, that's where the life is. So in 2008, I went and did my BOSI, my survival, and I went offshore to, it was the Noble Byron Welliver in Denmark. And that was me. The minute I landed on that rig, I was like, this is home. It just felt right.
I was going to ask you, do you think that the stress management talk to the men and guys, women who work offshore, are they receptive to it? How do you get the message across to them?
So yes, they are very receptive to it. I've done this talk for many, many companies. Ithaca, Kellis. I spent a year with Equinor on board their Mariner A and B, and I developed the world's first pilot program for stress management and mental health in the energy sector. And the feedback went internally via Equinor, went globally, and I have the data to back it up. You know, when you get an observation card, so the crews, whether it was drilling, we had drilling, I had service hands, the stewards, all that kind of stuff. The cars that they were putting in, which I've got, were phenomenal. The feedback was phenomenal. But I would always do a live. So my talk's quite simple. I do a 15-minute talk, because anything longer than that, people do struggle to kind of stay at attention. It's just human nature. My favourite part is the Q&A. So I developed a system called cinematic storytelling. So cinematic mental health. And I created a cinematic video reel, which was produced by Urban Media. That went viral when I released it. I had hundreds of thousands of views across the industry, and I still use that now. So that, on top of the book and my talk and the Q&A, which is the real bit that works, because that's their opportunity to open up. Now, how do you get a person to open up? You can't just provide a safe space, because that just doesn't manifest anything. You have to reverse engineer it for them. So I do that by first telling them my worst moments. I share to them, these are some of the mistakes I made in my life. This is what happens when I didn't open up and when I didn't communicate or release my pressure, open my bleed off. And I share my hardest truths with them. And it gives them a sense of, oh, okay, so this is actually somewhere I can open up. And it's about, I had a 90% attendance across the year, and the feedback was phenomenal.
What kind of topics do you cover in your talks that you give?
Life in general, divorce, parenting, the drinking culture. I communicate things like how do you actually handle your day-to-day life? When life is going great, we don't necessarily need stress management. We feel okay. We're having a good day. The sun's out just now. Everyone's loving Scotland in the World Cup. The Tartan Army. We're having a nice sense of things. But what about the person that's all nice? Maybe they've got a good income. Maybe they're not facing redundancy, but their husband's just left her, or her husband's just cheated on her, or the dog's died, or they're away to bury their mum. Oh. Just like that. You couldn't have tried that any better. Are you okay?
Sorry, start again. That's the first time I've ever done it. Oh my goodness.
Oh no, it's okay. Like, you see this? Don't delete this, because this is brilliant. This is the stuff that I love, and this is this is the kind of thing that'll help you get viral.
Oh my goodness.
Oh no, it's a wonderful thing. But the topics are. It's easy for me to say, let's talk about this, but your world. So I have this conversation with friends when I say, like, I have been diagnosed with PTSD since I was 25. It was 2 days after my son was born. That was my diagnosis day. And I knew I was going through a lot of struggles. But my PTSD is not the same as someone else's. The diagnosis is the same. The metrics are the same. But what is your personal experience of it. It's going to be different to mine. So I have been having conversations with thousands of men and women from all walks of life to try and better understand the vernacular, the temperature, and the texture of what does it feel like to be in your shoes? Like, and what could I learn from this individual? Like, oh my God, I didn't think of it that way. So, for an example, PTSD is a bit of a it's a dull thud word. Post-traumatic stress disorder. It doesn't sound nice. And I was like, how do I explain this to my son as he's growing up? How do I? So I called it part-time silly dad, PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Dad can sometimes be a bit silly. Dad can sometimes not do things right. And I'm human, but I want to show you what I've got. Part-time silly dad. And so when he was growing up, my son would be like, are we having a silly dad day? And I'm like, we're having a silly dad day. And so I found the way to communicate it in a way that it untethered it from the darkness. And I like to give people that same sense of hope.
But I mean, it is admirable what you're doing to give people hope. Do you think it's hard delivering your message? Because a lot of men don't like talking about their feelings. Neither does women sometimes.
I don't push against anyone if they don't want to talk. It's an invitation. That's all it is. It's an invitation. There's still things I don't like to talk about, and so I don't push on it. I don't like the sense of you must talk about this. For an example, I don't like the whole premise of mental health day. To me, it doesn't feel right to me. It's every day. So, for example, if my friend phoned me up and said, "Steve, can we talk about mental health?" I'd be like, "Oh, okay." But if he phoned me up and he went, "Stevie, do you want to go for a coffee or a pint?" I'd be like, "Sure, mate, sure." I know what's coming, but we've gone about it in the right way. Just in the sense of you wouldn't phone your friend up and go, "So, can we talk about your divorce?" You'd be like, "Okay." I, we wouldn't push into someone like that, but if we invite a person by making it comfortable and practical, it's a much easier way to do it.
Do you think a lot of men, because I know a lot of women, we're always talking and gossiping and everything like that, how we feel. We always get together, but a lot of men don't really do that. Or if they go down the for a coffee or down the pub for a pint, they don't really say that much. They just talk about football and stuff like that.
Well, that's not true. Men do talk. We do talk. We just talk differently. Men are extremely deep creatures, extremely deep. We're actually deeper in a lot of senses. We communicate differently. We need to work on our communication skills as men. I'll give you an example. I'm a fully trained copywriter. That was a skill set that I've developed over many years. And for 2 years, I worked for a digital agency delivering to 6,000 female coaches copywriting reviews on their sales pages, templates, Facebook ads, and things. It's a part of my life that I love. And 75% of the content coming through was sales pages on perimenopause. And I'm like, what is perimenopause? So I had to do research into this, and I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. This explains my mum, explains my girlfriend, I was like, now I'm beginning to understand. So I would say down the pub to the boys, I says, I tell you what, Janet, lads, you want to start figuring out this perimenopause. They're like, oh, I'm not talking about that. I'm like, it will make your life much, much easier because you will be able to understand where your wife or your partner is coming from, and it will make your job as the man much less stressful. Because too many men are like, well, I don't need to know about that. I'm like, you absolutely need to know about this, and vice versa.
So, do you think that men are changing in the way that they communicate and are being more open with their struggles and mental health?
I think so, Michelle. I do. I really think that men and women alike are changing the way that we dialogue, receive, and talk about these issues. It's not easy, and I don't have the solution. I have a way of doing things. I work off a guiding principle that came very, very difficult to me. It was the hardest lesson of my life. I kept experiencing the same string of pains and wounds and struggles and setbacks. I was a soldier, so I was, able to do tasks very, very well. But when things didn't go the way I wanted them to, I struggled with it. I struggled with authority. Plus, being a young man, I thought I had a better way of doing things. So wisdom came very hard. But when it did come, it taught me that there is wisdom in the wound. My job is to try and find out what that wisdom is teaching me. So instead of running from depression or running from anxiety or my PTSD, I stopped and I turned and faced it for years and said, what are you trying to teach me? What is it that you're bringing to my life instead of taking away from me? So I changed the parameters of the perspective on it. My attitude shifted and it's never changed. And it's just grown and grown. And that's when you move into post-traumatic growth. And they're doing studies now that there's a thing called post-traumatic intelligence. But that for me was the wisdom.
Okay, so what is post-traumatic intelligence then?
So a simple way to do it would be, we all know the classic story of you're a kid, you're taught not to touch the cooker rings, you touch the cooker rings, now you're never going to do it again. That's the lesson. The intelligence is being able to tell your little sister or your little brother, don't touch the cooker rings because look.
Mm-hmm.
So you now have intelligence that you can communicate to someone that needs that message. So how do we do this as adults? How do we do this as team members? Because we can all go offshore and drill a hole. We can all go offshore and build a pipeline or go to the office and manage personnel and do sales and mergers and acquisitions and all these things that are wonderful and part of the economy, and it's great. But how do we manage the person, each individual who's going through something? So I would never go into a room with 100 women and say, ladies, thank you so much for having me here today. It's wonderful. Now we're going to talk about childbirth. I just wouldn't, I wouldn't even dare do that. But I would go into a room and say, ladies, I would really like to know what your experience of childbirth was like. What did you learn? What was it like for you? How did it make you a better person? Did you struggle? Because I'm interested. And I might be able to find a little slice of wisdom and go, the way that person navigated parenting and motherhood can make me a better man. It might be able to teach me to be softer. And that to me is the intelligence part. Post-traumatic growth is the stage that comes after when you've admitted that you are dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, or whatever the struggle is that you're facing. It doesn't have to be that hard either. It could just be stress, everyday stress. But there's a little bit more of it than you're used to. My job is to teach them to open up, not get rid of it, but to just temper it down just a little bit. Now we can have a conversation and go, right. And they go, okay, I'm not so angry anymore. I'm not so het up. I'm not so peed off. I'm not so whatever. I can see where I went wrong there. Maybe I should change my attitude, but okay, well, that's a nice idea. The next time it comes around, they maybe do it a bit quicker. And before you know it, it becomes second nature to them. That's the intelligence.
I was just wondering, is offshore life quite stressful? Because a lot of people think, oh, you get half the year off. It can be quite. I mean, it's not even. I mean, it is good in that way, but you are missing basically half the year of your life.
Yes, it's a very unique industry. It's one of the most unique in the world. Yeah, you get that time off. That ultimately is the trade-off. We're doing it because the money is good. The money used to be a lot better, but the money is still pretty all right. But the time off, like when you land on the beach in Aberdeen or wherever you are in the world, and that you just feel this release of everything, and you're like, I get to live my life however I want for the next 3 to 4 weeks. I could never have given that up once I got a taste of it. But offshore can be the best environment in the world. It can be the most connected. These people become your family, like a second family, and you rely on them, and they rely on you. But sometimes it can be really hard. I remember I was on a rig. I won't say the client or who they were, but we were on a drill crew, and we had a massive. It was the last downturn, 2015, 16, I think, and we had a massive shakedown. And to keep the contract alive, to keep the tender open, we took a 28% pay cut across the board. That was hard. 28%. And when that result landed in your in your pay slip, you were like, oh my God. You know. So then you've got to start thinking, okay, maybe we're not going on that holiday. Maybe we're not upgrading the car. Maybe I'm not getting that, whatever the thing is. Now that sounds like, oh, is that your only problem? But at the time, people had maybe just bought a new car or a new home, a way to get married, and things are really struggling. That struggle, if you don't communicate it, just builds. When we drill a well, one of the last things we do in each section is called a well test. We do an integrity test. It's just, as it speaks for itself, to check that there are no issues, any cracks anywhere. And in that moment, what we're waiting for the result, the rig goes quiet. The doghouse goes quiet. Because if there's anything that comes back, it's like, oh, now we've got to go and do some fault finding. Where's the issue? What's gone wrong? It's stressful. Life can be like that. We do integrity tests on ourselves. If all our focus is on the marriage, then maybe our career takes a back step. If all our focus is on the rig and our career, like progression, then maybe our marriage or our relationships take a back step. There is no such thing as balance. It does not exist. It's a constant movement, but it's not just like a linear seesaw. There's different elements. There's your health. There's your finances. There is your retirement planning. There is, for it's just, you're gonna laugh at this, but I had to get used to the fact that I was going bald, and I had a nice full thick head of silver platinum hair. Oh, silver fox. Not anymore. No, now I'm just a classic middle-aged balding bloke from Aberdeen. And that sounds like such a little thing, but you would not believe the amount of comments people make. He's losing his hair. He's losing his. I'm like, thanks, I know, but that on top of I had to work 3 times as hard to lose the weight this time. I've struggled with my weight over the years, and I had enough just before Christmas, and I was looking back at myself and thinking, I don't want to grow old, big, and unhealthy. My knees were struggling, my back was sore, so I took a massive change in my life. Reduced like massively the amount of alcohol, got rid of all the food apps, got rid of all excuses, changed my diet, went to the gym, got a PT. In 6 months, I've lost it's about 15 kilograms, and I've changed my whole health structure. But the trade-off is, I can't get a Chinese once a week now. I can't have 2 bottles of wine a week. I can't do the things that I like to do as much.
Yeah, but that's an amazing achievement in itself. I was going to ask you, do you think if something goes wrong or there's an issue, like what you were saying before, some of the guys had to take a pay cut, maybe some men get made redundant or they didn't get the promotion. Do you think it affects a men's mental state more than it would a woman?
I mean, I can only speak for men, the men that I've worked with. I know myself, I got passed over for promotion quite a few times. I was a derrickman. I had my well control for years. I was the most experienced derrickman on the rig, and we were on rig shutdown, so there was only 2 crews, and there was no ADs on any crew. And then we were going to go back drilling, so we needed 4 ADs, and I was like, it's my time. Guaranteed to get a spot here. All 4 went to agency. And I just remember thinking, what am I doing? Like, what is the point in me being here? If I know the rig back to front, I can take permits out. I'm a gas tester. I've got all the experience. I've drilled wells for years. I like top hole all the way through. I've done so much experience. I've got my well control. I've been on the break. And yet I'm not getting a promotion. And I was like, what am I doing here? That set me back. My attitude shifted. I went from, I'm going to give it 100% to, you're getting the bare minimum. Because why should I work any harder? That might seem like a really bad attitude, but I was fighting for something that I was just never going to obtain. And yeah, that really affected me. Now, I don't like admitting that. I don't like admitting that, Michelle. Like, I didn't give it 100% every single day of my life on that rig. It's like, what you wanted everything from me, but you aren't going to allow me to progress. I'd been in a position for 6 years as Derrickman. I was like, I'm done. I went and worked in Africa. I took a demotion 2 steps and I tripled my wages. I reduced the stress, I reduced the responsibility, and I tripled my income. And I was like, there we go. And I went to work and I made a lot of money, and it was tax-free and it was wonderful. And I didn't have to think too much on the rig because I'd done that job for years, and I got to enjoy my career for a little while. And it gave me a room to breathe. But yeah, it can affect an individual's experience within themselves if, things don't go. It's not just the way that you want them to go. You're told that you're going to progress, and many people they get passed over. Their career doesn't go the way that they'd hoped or that they had deserved. They put the time in, they put the effort in, they made the sacrifices. They what's that saying? They paid their dues. You've paid your dues. This is your time, and you get ignored. That sense of, am I invisible? Like, do I even matter? That comes very hard and very swift, and it's painful.
I didn't think that men thought like that. That if they got passed over from promotion, they would just maybe. And I know a lot of men are not the same, but they would maybe think, "Oh, I'm not going to give 100%," because men are quite proud about their jobs and what they're achieving in their role within the organisation. A lot of guys are quite very, very proud.
No, I mean, we are very proud. Men are proud creatures, and my personal experience there is me being honest and open and admitting that I'm not a perfect man. I'm not even a great man. I'm just a man. And that seeking to be the absolute best of the best of the best, can be a recipe for failure. And I don't just mean like you failed in your career, but like failure in your own identity. The pressure that we put on ourselves is stark. And if we do that at every avenue, every integer of our life, then when do we get a chance to just be? Just be fun, be spontaneous, be hilariously in love with you and in your life. When do we get a chance to be adventurous? When do we get a chance to be creative if all we're doing is trying to be 100% all the time? We are not built or engineered that way. I remember watching I'm not huge into politics. I know what's going on, but I find it so disheartening. But what's his name? Obama was once in an interview, and the guy said something along what we are discussing here, Michelle. The interviewer said, "So you must give 100% every day." And he went, "No." And he went, "No, no, no." He went, "Son, if I can get 51% of my tasks done that day, I'm good." And I was like, okay. And he said, nobody gets 100% in a day. Nobody. We set ourselves up for an immense amount of struggle in life. A very intimate experience for me was I got divorced after 14 years of marriage. That was really painful, really, really painful. Coming back offshore the week after we separated was one of the loneliest experiences of my life. Surrounded by people, surrounded by working activity. My head was like in a tiny little fishbowl, and I was just, breathing was hard for me. And I'm not just saying that, it was really hard, but I just got on with the work. We didn't communicate very nicely to each other. We both admitted that later on. Now, me and my ex-wife, we communicate so wonderfully. because the only thing that matters is our son. You know, my son's 20 now, but every now and again we'll just communicate via text or a quick phone call. And I've seen us on the phone for 30 minutes just talking about the kid, and he's 20. That to me is a great step up for me as a man. Because back when we separated, I was a, you know, I was a frustrated, angry, struggling bloke, and I was like, no, she's done this, you know, it's all her fault. It's like, no, come on, Steve. You know, it takes two to tango. But growing from that, and that's that post-traumatic growth, moving into post-traumatic intelligence, like, well, I could have been a bit more gentle. I could have been a bit more easygoing. I could have been a bit more of a softer person to discuss things with. But my pride got in the way. And so I've learned to, in as many areas of my life as possible, I have been trying, and I'm still trying, to be a gentler spirit as I move through life. But when it comes to business, when it comes to my health routine, when it comes to my friendships, I am fiercely loyal and protective. And I like to go things, you know, with everything I've got, and then go back to just being me again.
So, another question I was going to ask you, what advice would you give to anybody, male or female, particularly struggling with their mental health?
It's a really good question. So there's a few things. It's wonderful that you are coming and that you are struggling, that you know it, that you know that you're struggling. So there's a sense of like ownership. Okay, things aren't going the way that you want them to. The first thing I would say is go and see your GP, first and foremost. Make an appointment, go and see a doctor. That's the first line of defense, absolutely. After that, reach out to there's a piece of advice I've learned along the way. You know, when somebody comes to you, whether it's on a phone call, a voice note, and whatever the communication is, and they say, I'm really struggling, Never say to that person, oh, come on, you know, just, you know, be strong, be strong. Never do that. If somebody comes to you and admits their weakness, don't ask them to be strong. They've came to you to be weak. Let them be weak. There is a frailty to the human condition that we are ignoring, and that is one of the most beautiful things. If somebody feels that they can be safe to you, to be weak, to be their lesser version of themselves, and they're choosing you to do it, let them do it. You don't need to fix them. You don't need to solve it. You don't need to restructure their life. You just need to hold space for them and say, I'm listening. Let it all out. That's the first thing I would do for a person is say, yeah, tell me everything that's going on. And I listen to them. I go, wow, that, you know, that's really hard. That's a hard thing to be going through. What does that make you feel like? Just ask them, you know, what do you need from me? How can I be of service to you? There's too much cliches around there. Oh, you know, what's for you won't go by you. I hate that saying. I hate it. What's for you won't go by you. It's like, it's just gone by me. It's just gone. It's just left the building. It's gone. It's never coming back. So it was clearly not for me. But that doesn't help me. Like, I need some input. I need some advice because my contrast is dimmed. The colour's gone away. The volume's up so hard I can't barely think. I need somebody to come along and just turn the television down a little bit in my mind. Turn it off. Sit there and say, this is really crap, isn't it? Like, yes, this is really crap. This is awful. And then we can maybe laugh about it. But the tips and the tricks I don't think work. I think being a human being and just being real, that there's a word that gets thrown about, being authentic. Like, what does that even mean? You just be yourself. Just turn up, have a laugh.
Because I know that working offshore, because I've worked offshore a couple of times myself, but I know working offshore that it is a family orientated environment. I mean, it's one of the most safest places you can work offshore. Do the guys really have each other's backs? Is it getting better?
I mean, my experience, I've still got people who check in on me every day. So I've got a military group chat, which I've had for decades, these friends. We check in on each other every day. I've got a group chat with guys that I've served with offshore, and we check in on each other all the time. You find your tribe, you find your clan, you know. But I could safely say that in the current climate, I would say 99.9% of a person offshore, you could go and say, even somebody that you might not like, you don't quite get on with, you could knock on their door and go, look, I know we're not exactly like mates, but I need to fucking offload to someone. I need to talk to someone right now. And they'd probably go, fair enough, step inside. I don't think we live in a time where people would turn you down. I believe offshore, I don't just believe, I know offshore is a very sacred unit of people who've chosen to step on that rig, that vessel, that boat, that platform, and be a person of integrity. Do we manifest those traits all the time? No. Sometimes we can be grumpy, moody, all-nettered, pains in the backside, who say the wrong thing and do the wrong thing. But that is just being a person.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there on that wise note. Right. So that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Steve for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.